Hello people, I'm Hakuna My Data channel. My name is Danyllo Verweij and I got top 8 at the Spijkenisse regional playing Crystron. So Crystron, it's a deck I'm very fond of. I've actually started playing this deck way back in 2017. It was one of the first decks I've ever played and built in real life. So when the support was announced, I was very excited. And as I was testing the deck, I got even more excited because the new support that it gotten is absolutely excellent and I really enjoy playing this deck into the new meta. I also think it's a really good call into the next format. It has a lot of things going for it. It's pretty consistent. It has a good end board, stuff like that. It has some flaws too, of course. It's not without flaws, but I think if you would like to build a budget deck, I think Crystron's definitely something to consider. Before we get to the list, some shoutouts. Shout out to my Team Hoodcake. Shout out to my friend and team member Bart, who was my only loss and got first at the regional. Shout out to my boys Dennis, Ali, and Greg. They traveled together with me to Spijkenisse, and Dennis and Greg also topped, and Ali almost topped, but his only loss was Dennis, unfortunately. And also shout out to all the people who tested with me. Shout out to Guru, who discussed the deck with me a lot. Shout out to Gio, of course. We also discussed the deck a lot before coming to this event. And without further ado, let's get into the list. So for the list, I played Triple Smiger. This is like the one card starter as a normal summon. So you normal summon the Smiger and then you add the inclusion, which is also 3 off. This is really the card that's all about. So it's a new card from Supreme Darkness. It has 3 effects. The first effect is it adds a Crystron card on activation. And that's any Crystron card. It can be a monster or a trap, which I play 1 of. In the graveyard, you can banish it to summon a Crystron back from the graveyard, which is also really strong. And that's the third effect that doesn't seem too good on the surface, but it actually comes up a lot. It protects your Crystons once each from battle in a turn. And that can come up because ideally you want to end on some amount of the Crystron tuners. And the Crystron tuners are quite weak stat-wise, so having this on board is actually pretty decent sometimes. But most of the time you will have to pop it and send it to the graveyard. But otherwise, yeah. So this is like one of the best cards in the deck. This is the card you want to go to. This is like your true 1-card combo. It's also the best 1-card combo. And Smiger gets to it, but Smiger's slightly worse because you have to play a line a bit differently if you want to get certain interruptions. But yeah, these cards are just a 3. These cards are insane. There's 1-card combo, really good. Nothing to really elaborate on further. 3 is Sofefnir. This one also, like Smiger, is one of the earlier cards for Crystron. So it's not quite new, but this card is still excellent. Card was always the way Crystron really got a good grind game, good play every turn. So basically you discard a Crystron card and summon it from the graveyard, and then you can destroy 1 card on the field. Most of the time it will be itself, because when it's destroyed on the field by battle card effect, you can summon a Crystron from the deck, which is a very strong effect still. And the reason I play 3 is it is sort of a starter. It's not a 1-card starter because you do have to discard 1 Crystron card. But if you do have that Crystron card, it basically gets you the same things as the other 1-card starters might get you. So another reason to play 3, and that's also why I play 2 of this. You want to have 5 of the level 5s in deck at least, in my opinion, to get a nice resource flow. Because you will summon the level 5s a lot. The deck kind of centers around the level 5s, so you want a sufficient number of level 5s in the deck. And then let's get to Silverdor. I played 2 of this card. This is also a new card from Supreme Darkness. You can target a Crystron card on the field to summon it from the hand or grave. And then when it's normal special summon, you can send 2 Crystron cards from the deck to the graveyard, which is really insane. The reason I play 2 of this over 3, and I have to play 3 of this, because Silverdor is not really a starter. It seems like it would be because it dumps 2, but you have to commit a Crystron name on the field. So a lot of time that will be a normal summon, and if you're committing a normal summon, your hands become kind of weaker to certain hand traps, because one of the things I will get to that with the other Crystron card, but you kind of want to save your normal summon for something that'll allow you to play through hand traps. So Salvador kind of defeats the purpose of that. But SUDA is still really good. It's a really excellent support. Like, without this card, the deck wouldn't be half as good, I think. So, that's for those. And as I feel the Crystron deck isn't the most consistent, I play 3 Terratop. The idea of Terratop is it gives you extra starters, because this is basically another 1-card starter. So the idea is you summon Terratop, you attack a Tomborg, and then you make Cherubini with it. And then by making Cherubini, you can dump the Smyger. And Smyger is like it's a 1-card combo. It gets you to Inclusion, and then Inclusion will get you to the rest of your end board, basically. There are some other things people consider in these slots. I've seen Azamina, I've seen Kashtera, Adventure, sometimes Adventure with the Terratop as well. Tidal, something to consider. But I felt like right now this was the best package, because it doesn't use a normal summon. That's one thing that's very important, that it doesn't use a normal summon. And the level 3s also are kind of important, as well as the Cherubini is just nice to end on, because it also protects your monster that are pointed to by the Cherubini, which is important in the Raizo matchup, because that means Detonator cannot really touch them efficiently. But yeah, the Terratops are really good. Borg is kind of a brick, so that's one reason why you would consider other packages instead of this. But Borg isn't the worst brick, because you can still make the Clockwork Knight link that I play in my Exo deck. And that can come up because the Clockwork Knight actually isn't only to make certain lines work, but it's also great for the revive effect. So I think these cards were really good all around. But it's something to consider. Foolish, another 1-card combo. It's also an extender. Like, it's Foolish, it dumps to the graveyard, and the Crystron's all the graveyard effect, so it's like a no-brainer. Then I play triple of the new tuner Tristaros. This card is actually insane. So, what it does, on the field, when the opponent activates a card or effect, you can summon a Crystron from your deck and then synchro summon the machine synchro using the monster you summon from the deck. Not specifically Tristaros, but actually only the monster that you summon from the deck has to be used. So, the reason this is good is because it allows you to dodge certain hand traps. Most often it would be the targeting hand traps, but it also allows you to play through a lot of other hand traps. Sometimes Ash, sometimes Droll, right? And also Nib. So, the effect is really good. And that's not even the only effect. It's also an effect in Graveyard where you can banish it to destroy a Synchro monster. And when destroying the Synchro monster, you can then summon 2 Crystron monsters from the deck, which is absolutely crazy. This card is really, really insane. The one thing, that is one point of contention, is some play 2, and I prefer 3. So it's another normal summon, so you have to normal summon this. You can get it from the deck as well, right? But it's a normal summon, and it kind of clogs with your Smyger, because your Smyger is also a normal summon. I myself am also a big believer is that you should play 5 normal summons ideally, but Tristalos kind of breaks the rule, because Tristalos is not a starter. It's more akin to an extender, so you can't really compare it to Smyger, so that's kind of weird. And the thing is, most of the time the normal summons clogging thing is only when the card that it clogs with isn't useful when you draw it as well. But if you draw Tristalos plus Smyger, it is still useful, because you can just ditch this with the Solfefner and then get access back to it from the graveyard. So I think with how insane this card is, it allows you to play through hand traps. I think for me, it was definitely correct to play at 3. I've had someone just scoop, because I like follow up with the Salvador that I could revive from the graveyard. And the moment he saw Tristalos, he was like, no, I can win this game, because the Tristalos will just allow me to dodge basically everything. So yeah, Tristalos, great card. This is probably the best new card, but the bar is really high, because I think all the Crystron cards that they got are at least 8 out of 10, so really good cards. And then for the bricks, I play 3 Crystron soft bricks, you could say. They're not the worst to draw, but these are the cards you actually just want to have in the deck. So Citri This is one of the old tuners. You can target a monster in the graveyard to summon it, and then synchro summon using that monster and Citri to a machine synchro monster. This is one of my endboard pieces, but there's another reason why this card is important, and that is because with Tristeros, let's say you have Tristeros and you're trying to resolve the Solvador and they impermit. What you can do, for example, is then you can summon the Citri from the deck and then synchro with the Solvador so it gets off the field, which dodges the imperm. And then you also have the Citri in graveyard for plays later. You can also use all three of them, and that also comes to make the Crystron level 9 synchro, which we'll get to when we get to the extra deck. But Citri is very important because it allows you to Tristeros to dodge effectively, but it also is a good endboard piece to have. This turn is also one of the older cards. It's similar to Smyger, where it has like an on-field effect. That's actually, I didn't go into the on-field effect because it doesn't matter that much, but Smyger and this turn have an on-field effect, where you can target a face-up card, destroy it, and then summon a Crystron tuner from your deck. It doesn't come up all that often, but there are some lines where you can use this effect. Through draw, for example, it can come up. But the real important effect is the second effect, the graveyard effect. You can banish it and then add a Crystron monster from your deck to your hand. It's not a starter by itself, so you only play one, but it's a very important one-off because it allows all your combos to work, basically. I've seen a list playing multiple, but I only recommend in like builds that discard a lot of cards from your hand, where this is kind of good to draw. And then the last card is also one of the new cards from Supreme Darkness, is Cluster. It's basically, if someone knows Virtual World, they might remember Chuchi. It's kind of similar to that. So you can target a face-up card, or two, if you control a Crystron Synchro. And then that card will be destroyed. And then you shuffle a Crystron card from graveyard or banished back into the deck. So both the shuffling and the popping is like really important, because the shuffling allows you to get the an infinite grind game, basically. And the popping is just useful as an interruption, especially because it's not a monster interruption, it's a trap. So it gives your endboard more layers to it. So this card is very important. It also has a second effect, where Crystron cards cannot be banished by your opponent's card effects, which is actually really useful because there are a bunch of popular cards in the metagame, like SP Little Knight and Chaos Angel, where like this card not only resists the removal on itself, but also on any Crystron monster on the board, which is really important. So basically, they have to pop it, or they have to send it with something like Feedsmith Desiree. Otherwise, this are 6 to the board. It's like excellent against Malice, for example, because they have a lot of banish interruptions, and if this is up, then it's kind of hard to them. They basically have to make access code or just not pop it at all, basically. So yeah, these are all important one-offs for the deck. And then for the non-engine, I play 3 Ash, 4 hand traps, and then 3 Veiler, 3 Imperm, 3 Nib, and 3 Fulos. So these are my hand traps of choice. I didn't have any problem with most of it. Veiler is one that I feel like is kind of becoming a little bit mediocre, but that's mostly because of Malice, and I feel like Malice is kind of a rough matchup for the deck. But otherwise, I think Veiler is like a pretty fine hand trap. It hits a lot of the other decks as well. So I don't think overall I had a problem with the deck. Yeah. The one thing that kind of is a bit expensive right now, at least, is the Fulos. I'd say if you can afford Fulos, don't worry. You can play another hand trap in its place, or other going second cards in its place. The Fulos isn't absolutely mandatory. I just liked it in the main deck. It was good for me. But yeah, I don't think I had any problems with my hand trap lineup overall. And the final non-engine is like triple droplet and then 1 talent. Let's go over the droplet first. Droplet is very important for multiple reasons. It's a chainable, which means like if your opponent has some kind of board, you can try to break it with droplet. And since all your most of your cards are graveyard effects, it essentially pays for itself, really. And droplet is also very important for one card that is kind of big in the metagame, and that's Abyss Dweller. Also, like Caesar is very important in the metagame as well. But you want cards that can out that, and you have Imperm already. so that's already an out for those cards. But Droplet as another card to combat those cards is very important, I think. So yeah, no problem with Droplet. I think it was great. It could hit a lot of things that very effectively. So I'm glad I played it. The one talent is a bit random. This is the 41st card. Yeah, you could cut this and play 40. The talent for me was a way to have like another strong card for going first and decent card for going second. And it bumped my deck up to 41. And I think with the Borg brick that you have like 4 bricks in the deck. I think it was fine to add a 41st card. It doesn't compromise the consistency too much, but you also get to play like a really powerful card like Talents. And Talents for me was really good. Like, I remember when I got Drolled, and then I looked at his hand, I saw 2 hand traps, and I removed the hand trap, which I thought was the most problematic, and just played through the other one. And then, yeah, I also had one moment where someone full lost me. I ashed it, and I could Talents look at his hand and remove the ash from his hand and just full combo. Like, if I could, I would play more of this. This card is really good, but I'd have to find space for it. Then for the extra deck, I play 1 Amatrix, so this is one of the old synchros. The on-field effect isn't that relevant, but it could be relevant. So when it's synchro summoned, you can put all the opponent's monsters in defense position, or special summon monsters, which can come up because since the tuners are so weak, most of the time they will try to go to the battle phase to out your tuners, and then having Amatrix to just put everything in the defense is decent, it's alright. There are other options for level 5s, like Chambara. The reason I played Amatrix is because, one, the graveyard effect is pretty good, because if it's destroyed, you can summon a Crystron from the grave, which also comes up with the Tristaros, which pops the Amatrix. But I also found that in some lines it was important to have Amatrix, because it's specifically a Crystron, so you can revive it from the graveyard with some other cards, which I thought was very important. I think Draw was one hand jab where it was important to have this specifically. But you can play Chambara. I thought they were fine for me. And then 2 of the Elascaletus. This is a new card from Supreme Darkness as well. On summon, you can add a Crystron card from graveyard or banished back to your hand, which doesn't seem like the most useful effect, but like it grants follow-up. But the really important thing about this card plays through Droll. Since you can send any Crystron cards from deck to graveyard basically with the Solvador, you can get the trap without playing into Droll, which is really insane. But I think the more important effect is the on-pop effect. When it's destroyed, you can summon a Crystron from graveyard or banished back to the field. What often happens is that you banish the Tristaros to pop the Elascaletus to summon 2 from deck. And then the Elascaletus will just summon the Tristaros you banished, which is very, very good and very efficient. It also has a third effect. It has debuff effect, so monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack and defense, which doesn't seem that good on paper, but in practice it's actually kind of rough, because this is 26 and a lot of cards are just too small to get over it after the debuff. Things like Detonator or Nib, for example. It's kind of hard to get over this, really. And since it's a Crystron Synchro, the cluster will get a pop too, so sometimes it's very useful to just have the Elascaletus with a cluster on board. So yeah, this card's also very, very good. And I think you should play too. It works better for the grind game. So you can get it back with cluster, but most often you will get something else back with cluster, so you want to have another copy of this card in extra deck just in those cases. So I had no problems with playing 2. Next card is Samurai Destroyer. This card is useful for, like, the primary reason is when you play around Nib, right? You can use the Tristaros, summon a level 5, and then make this. And then Nib will tribute it. And then when it's tributed by Nib, it will use the graveyard effect to summon any machine back from the graveyard, which is really, really useful because it allows you to push through Nib when you otherwise wouldn't have anything to push through Nib. But a lot of one thing that Crystron deck profile don't really talk about is how to use this card offensively. So the first effect is also very important, and the reason is because it plays around like certain immunities, like destruction immunity and targeting immunity. What came up for me in the regional is that my opponent had a detonator with 3 materials and a aggregator under the detonator, and then a cross. So the cross was live to negate any monster effect. I made this, and I had the cluster face up. So what I did, I attacked into the detonator, and then when Samurai Destroyer battles, the monster it battles, effects are negated, and your opponent cannot use any card or effect the moment it battles. So what I did, I cluster popped the detonator. Since it was negated, it cannot protect itself anymore, and it cannot respond with the detonator to pop something else, regardless. And then I still got a replay to beat over his dual drive. And so basically, this Samurai Destroyer with the trap just outed 5 interruptions on its own. So it's very important to consider these options with Samurai Destroyer, that it can circumvent these immunities, particularly targeting destruction and targeting or destruction immunities, which Cluster kind of struggles against because it targets and it pops. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why it's also very important. But the main reason is to play around it as well. So I play one Dragster. This is one of the synchros you go into the most. It's a spell trap negate, and it reduces level by negating a spell. So it starts at level 7, and then when it negates a spell or trap, it goes back down to level 5. It's really useful, actually, because the level 5 is very important for this deck. Because with the level 5 and the 2 level 2 tuners, you can make like the big guy. So yeah, very important. A lot of people are playing 2. I was fine with 1. The second one didn't really come up for me in testing, and on the regional, it also didn't really come up. So, yeah, you could choose to play 2. That's fine as well. I like 1. So yeah, this is the most important card of the extra deck, basically. Well, besides Elascalettus, maybe. But Crystron Gandrax is one of the older ones as well. So, on summon, it banishes 1 card from field or grave, a monster, for every material that was used for the synchro summon. So when it's summoned, yeah, you can just hit the field and the graveyard sometimes, which is very useful against Fiendsmith decks. Against Raizo is also pretty good. Into Malice, you need to use this at a specific moment, but in some scenarios, it's still like really useful. And yeah, this is one of the main interruptions you have on your end board, because you would have Cyber Dragon Infinity with the 2 tuners. And with the 2 tuners, you'd be able to make this eventually, right? So this card is really important. And it also has a graveyard effect, which is also useful. It can summon any banished monster. Like, you can do some dumb stuff with this. You can banish, like, boss monster from your opponent, and then later pop it with, like, Tristaros, Cluster, anything like that, and you can summon the boss monster for free, which is really good. So yeah, this card is really strong. One of the best cards in the deck. Playing 1 Navy Dragon Mech. This card can come up sometimes, where you use Citri and one of the Elascalettus in the graveyard to summon this, and then it negates on summon, basically. It's like, let's say, for example, your opponent does a play that in a next chain would trigger something else, like a monster effect. You can just make this, and then negate that on the spot. It also has a graveyard effect. When it's popped, you can add 1 tuner back from your graveyard to your hand, which can be useful sometimes. It has come up where you would like pop it with, for example, Tristalos, and then you can just add Ash Blossom or Effect Failure back. That's pretty useful. I didn't make it in this tournament. I might still play this moving forward, but yeah, I think it's useful, but you could potentially cut it as well. So next up, I play Axel Synchron and Satellite Warrior. Axel Synchron and Satellite Warrior are like extra plays you can do with the tuner setup. You can make these, like, for example, you can make Dragster, and then afterwards, if Dragster used the negate to become level 5, you can summon Axel Synchron. And with Axel Synchron and the Dragster, you can make Satellite Warrior, and basically pop 3 on summon. I thought it would be more useful against Malice, because you don't really want to have them banished, right? And also useful against back row decks, because the Crime Gathers only banishes monsters, so it's not really useful to make into a back row deck. But back row decks are very popular right now, and I actually never made these in the regional. I also rarely made them in testing. These are just insurance options, but I think moving forward I would just probably play something else instead of this. Clockwork Knight, a very important card. This makes the Smyger a 1-card combo. For this card, you need machine non-link monster with 1000 or less attack, and Smyger fits that bill because it's exactly 1000 attack. It has a actually very useful effect. Two useful effects, actually. The first effect I don't use in this deck because I don't play Clockwork Knight, but you could definitely play it in this deck because you do have a continuous spell to send for free, you know? But the second effect is actually very useful. You can target one of your machine monster with less than 1000 attack in your graveyard and then summon it from graveyard by tributing another machine monster you control. So this can actually be used to get you back to Tristalos or Citri in some niche scenarios, but those niche scenarios do come up more often than you think, so be mindful of this. So it's not just like your standard link 1 to link away, right? So yeah, this card was excellent. This card is also very important to play. If this card wasn't reasonable, it would be Mirage, but I'm glad it is Clockwork Knight. So yeah, Cherubini for the Terratop. As explained, you can dump a level 3, so you would dump the Smyger or the Thistron depending on the situation, and that would get you to combo. One thing to note, it does boost itself by the attack. So Thistron is 1500, so this would become a 2000 meter, which is pretty useful. With Smyger it become 1500, which can be useful sometimes. But another useful thing is the monsters it points to cannot be destroyed by battle. So when I go through this line, I make sure that I end on some monsters that I would like there, specifically in his pointers. But there's a blessing and a curse because neither player can destroy the monster by card effects. So if you want to pop something, for example with Tristaros, you should not summon it to the pointer. That's something to remember if you play Terratop. Very important. Yeah, so the card is really useful. I liked it overall. Next up is the Infinity package, so Nova and Infinity. This is one of the main endboard pieces. You can make Nova with 2 level 5 machines, so like Solfador and Solfafnir, and then make Infinity on top. Nova is something I very often also summon on the 5th summon, and that's where Makaba comes in. So when Cyberdank Nova is sent sent to the graveyard by your opponent, you can summon the Machine Fusion monster from your extra deck. So Makaba is the best one because Makaba is also like an interruption in an opponent's turn. And I often make Nova on the 5th summon, and then if they have Nib, they might have to Nib here, but then I punish them really hard with both the Samurai Destroyer and the Nova. Then I would summon Makaba, and with the Samurai Destroyer I could summon this back and still make the Infinity, which is like really, really good. But yeah, this is a no-brainer. This card is really good. And yeah, the Makaba. One thing to note is that it says if it's sent in possession, so that also means from extra deck. So where that comes up is against Maximus, which is getting more popular in the Mitsurugi deck. If they don't make Dweller and they Maximus you can just send these, for example. You can send a Nova and then the Infinity because you can summon it. And then the Nova will summon Makaba, so you then have just a free monster or spell negate, which is really solid. And the final card on extra deck is Typhon. It is useful to have in case you're kind of in a weird spot where you have the out detonator, you know. I think I would play this going forward. I think it's too important, even though there are some moments where you're just like, Typhon is kind of meh, but I think you need it for detonator. So for the side deck, Triple Lancia for Malice and the Mirror, like no-brainer. Like this should be in our side deck at all times in this format. Then I played 2 Phantasme. I didn't want to get Meows for the regional, and I thought it was like, I could just play Phantasme for the time being. Phantasme is okay. It does play into Thrust a little hard, which can be a reason to not play it, but Thrust is losing a little bit of favor, so maybe you can get away with this. And also, if you think Meow's a little bit expensive, I do recommend the Phantasme for Malice just to have more chances to draw into Lancia. It could be useful against Fiendsmith. I don't know if I would send it into Fiendsmith though. But yeah, it just draws 2 and then you send 1 back whenever they make a link monster. It could be useful. I didn't draw it in the regional except when it was like too late, but it's fine. One thing I did note from the regional is that Malice is just insane. That deck is really, really insane. So moving forward, I'll probably cite more cards for Malice just because that matchup is so insane. Then I played triple Metal Tronus. And then I think this also important card to mention was a Poseidon. But let's start with Metaltronus. So Metaltronus is here. Yeah, it was here for Detonator. But then I thought, like, couldn't it be useful against more monsters? And then I think the two cards that are kind of really good against Crystron are Caesar, so the DD High Wave King Caesar, and Abyss Dweller. And so me and my friends were like thinking about targets we could play. And then Poseidra came up. So it's a new card from SUDA. So you can send the water monster from your hand to summon it from hand. And then when it's normal or special summoned, I think, or maybe only special summoned, you can dump an Atlantean or Mermail from your deck to the graveyard and then bounce a card. So if this card wasn't at least decent in what it does, because it's a pretty decent board breaker, right? I probably wouldn't be playing this, but I was like, oh, I can play this card, and then it's also useful if I draw it against Detonator, right? Because it can bounce, so it basically forces an interaction, or the Detonator is gone. And since you play a water deck, it's kind of free to summon from hand as well. But yeah, mostly I play this before Metaltronus because it matches with Caesar through Water and 28, and it matches with Abyss Dweller for Water and Sea Serpent. So yeah, that was like a really good find. I was checking the run, I found the old Poseidon, and my friend was like, "Wait, that's a new Poseidon, right? In Supreme Darkness." So I ended up playing this card. This card was actually really clutch against Detonator. It basically forced a strike, or the Detonator would be removed from the field. So I like this. I didn't draw this, unfortunately, but the theory behind it is, I think, sound. But I think moving forward, if I need more space in my side deck, I would switch this for Exorcy Encore. Because basically serve the same purpose. Maybe I can try to find a way to out Malice with Metaltronus as well. And then maybe I will keep playing it. Because that's one of the things that could be useful about Metaltronus is outing Whitebinder, for example. But that's something I'd have to think about in the future. But in theory, these cards were great. Unfortunately, I didn't draw Metaltronus. I did draw this, and it was good. And for my going first cards, I played Triple Strike. Strike was really good. I liked Strike and Judgment in the format. I moved away from like the Thrust package because I felt like it wasn't very useful anymore. Only works if you get interrupted, and then yeah, the cards that you can get off Thrust are good, but the Strike was actually really solid. Like the reason it's Strike over Judgment is because since you have spell trap negates through Dragster and Infinity, I thought it was more important to have monster negates. And it still negates summon, so that was useful. I think these cards were good. They came up and they were like really, really strong. Then one call by for going first as well. Yeah, you need it for Lancer, you need it for Shifter. It's not even for the other hand, just because you can already play through other hand traps pretty efficiently, but it's like specifically for the lingering hand traps, like Lancia, Shifter, Full Loss, and stuff like that. So that was good. And then the final card was Darkstrike Fighter. 4 time. It's a machine synchro, so you can make it with your Tristerlos. You can even make it under the restriction of the main deck monster, the Smyger and Tisford, because they lock you if you use the on-field pop effect. This didn't come up, I didn't go into time. People actually reasonably scooped on time when they saw the Crystron cards. They knew well enough that if I had a certain board state, they were just not winning, so this card didn't come up. So that's the deck. Thank you for watching, and once again, thanks to Hakuna My Data for having me on the channel, and hopefully to more Crystron deck in the future. Thank you, and goodbye.